All right, sales track review. The first 6 lessons of sales track is starting point, your 15-second commercial, the use of qualifiers and tie downs, your personal borrowed story, the litmus test, and setting the appointment in stone. Since my audio is coming in and out so poorly, maybe we could do this. Dr. Joan, I'm going to go to you real quick.
Hi there.
Do we have you there, Dr. Joan?
I'm here. How are you today?
I am doing wonderfully, but I was running a little bit late from a previous engagement, so I wasn't able to make it in the office in time to start this, so I'm having to do this remotely, and as you can tell, this is not sounding really good. And I've even been trying to put the phone up against my ear. I just think I'm really in a bad cell area, which is really a shame. But in any event, would you mind, what I'm thinking is I'm going to introduce the slides, and then if you could kind of just give a synopsis and help me kind of work through this tonight. Is that doable for you?
Sure. But your sound is coming through just fine now. Actually, it sounds great.
Oh, it does? Okay, yeah. Well, wouldn't you know it? Yeah, wouldn't you know it? This is this is information that you know very well. So can you give people kind of a fill-in real quick on the first 6 lessons, sales track, what that really represents to us, and then I'm just going to start going through slides, and you and I can kind of go back and forth on the slides if my voice starts going in and out.
That sounds perfect. Absolutely. The sales track is all about your invitation. At least these first 6 steps of sales track is all about the invitation. And in fact, if you are new, what I would encourage you to do is really concentrate on the invitation. That's really going to be the most critical part. You can always refer your analysis to be ran by the corporate office. You can run the analyses yourself. You can have your upline do them. Really concentrate on that invitation so that you have it down solid. So your invitation really concentrates on 6 main areas. First of all, it's a starting point of with whom do I start? This really is about who you know. My suggestion is to start with a list of people that you know. Sit down with an Excel spreadsheet or at least a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and start brainstorming on any and everybody that you know without judgment. Do not judge. Just write down any and every name that comes to mind. After you spent a good hour doing this, now you're going to judge. Is this a client prospect, an agent prospect, or both? And on a scale of 1 to 10, are they hot, they're a 10, or are they a 1, not so hot? And you're going to pick up the phone and call on those top 10 people. Now, this is the start of your database. From here on out, anybody and everybody that you meet goes into that database. So with whom do I start is not just the list of people you know. It's your prospecting activities. It's the marketing activities. It's your target market. It's who you're going to connect with and reach out to introduce Worth Unlimited to people. Then, of course, once you have the list and you know who you're going to go after, you need to identify what are you going to say. How are you going to start that conversation? That's your commercial. Your commercial needs to be engaging. It needs to be solid. It needs to be enticing. One of the mistakes I see for people when they have a commercial is they try to make it so exciting and so exotic that they really don't even make sense. I want to discourage you from doing that. You want people to actually ask questions about what you're doing and want them to have more information. So make it exciting. Make them want to have more information. If they don't understand what you're saying, they don't want to feel stupid, and they are not going to ask for more information. So my suggestion is to practice on people. Contact somebody on your list, your friend that you go to lunch with, the person that you sit next to at church, whomever it may be. Ask them to help you and practice on your commercial. I also encourage you to have several different commercials. Have one for your target market. Have one for when you're at the gas station and just happen to come across somebody that you don't know. Have one at networking events if you're going to do networking as a prospecting activity. So have different commercials. Now, once that conversation is started by that commercial, and by the way, side note, what's happening this week and what's been happening all month. We have holidays here. We're being around people we haven't seen in a long time. So one of those commercials you need to have is not only what do you do for a living and let me introduce Worth Unlimited, but it's also a response to, hey, what have you been up to lately? That's what a lot of the people that you haven't seen in quite some time are going to be asking you. What have you been up to? So be prepared. That's the way to start the conversation. In the course of the conversation, you need to practice qualifying questions and tie downs. Really, I like to practice the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time they're talking, 20% of the time you're talking. All of this, especially the qualifying questions and tie downs and asking a lot of questions to get to know them, that's going to tie into what we're talking about tonight, and that's closing techniques. Everything that you hear, you need to be taking great notes on. This entire conversation that you're having with these people in your invitation is going to help you close them. And if you are referring them to somebody else, whether it's your upline, your sponsor, corporate, whatever it may be, let them know some of the hot spots. Let them know how they answered some of the questions. Let them know any type of resistance that they may have. So ask a lot of questions. Based on how they've answered those questions, you're going to insert different stories that are relevant. Now, whether or not my personal story is relevant, I do tell everybody my personal story, and then I also start tying in other stories that are relevant to them. So it's personal and borrowed stories. Remember that facts tell, but stories sell. And people will act based on emotion, typically not on fact. So these stories are going to evoke the emotion to help people take action. That's what you're trying to get to. So tell relevant stories, relevant to them, based on how they told those or answered those questions. The litmus test is the same thing. There's two main questions in the litmus test. On a scale of 1 to 5, where's your desire to blank? What did they say was important to them? Was it getting out of debt? Was it saving as much interest that they could? Was it beating the banks at their own game? Was it to become their own boss? Was it to be in charge of their own schedule? What was it that they said was important to them? That's what you tie into in the litmus test. If they're 1 or 2, they're not really all that interested. You want to do a takeaway. Hey, when you're a little bit more interested in this, or when this is more of a priority, let's get back together. But leave the door open so you can follow back up with them. If they're a 3, 4, or 5, they're interested. Now you're going to ask them, are you serious or just curious? And only move forward with people that are serious. Then, because you're moving forward with people that are serious, you're going to set the appointment in stone. Now, all of these things are about setting the appointment in stone. You do need to practice all 6 of these steps to get that. But there's certain words that you can use. There's certain ways to set the appointment in stone to really increase the probability of somebody maintaining that appointment. It's about creating that curiosity. It's about creating that sense of urgency to help them move forward. Again, and I can't emphasize this enough, this conversation is absolutely critical in the sales process as you move forward. So you notice that stage 1 of that sales process is that gaining interest. It's that first 6 lessons of sales track. Pardon me. Number 2, when you're recruiting, is you're going to send them some videos or live webinar, or a live opportunity meeting in person. You want to make sure in that initial conversation that you have follow-up appointments scheduled as well. You never want to leave a conversation without a follow-up appointment scheduled. And by that, I'm not saying, hey, I'll give you a call on Thursday and we'll connect. It's, hey, on Thursday at 10 o'clock, I'm available to discuss this further. Does that work for you, or is Friday at 4 better? It's about having a solid appointment scheduled for that follow-up time frame. So when you're recruiting and you're just sending them videos, you want to have that follow-up within 24 to 48 hours. If they're attending a live webinar or an opportunity meeting that's face-to-face, you want to have that follow-up in 12 to 24 hours. Those are really your critical mass time frames, so make sure those appointments are scheduled prior to ending that initial conversation. You also want to let them know what to expect. Hey, I'm going to refer you over to corporate. Hey, I'm going to send you some videos so that you can learn more, whatever that case may be. Now, that first appointment is either to review the videos that they've watched if you're recruiting, or if you are selling, that first appointment is for them to actually have their analysis ran. So in that initial conversation, when you're telling them what to expect, you need to tell them, make sure you have your most recent debt statements in front of you. Now, Mac, don't listen for a minute. There is an analysis software worksheet in your back office. Please do not use it. It is horrible. When somebody gets that, they think that they are getting homework. And if somebody gives you homework as an adult and you don't get your homework done, what do? You avoid the person that assigned it to you. So if you want to get stuck in voicemail jail, go ahead and use that form. Otherwise, just tell them, hey, get your most recent debt statements in front of you. Your mortgage, your credit card, your auto loan, your student loans, your lines of credit, any type of debt you may have your most recent debt statements in front of you. Don't worry, I don't care who you owe. I'm not going to ask for account numbers. All we really need to know is where you're starting from so we can show you where we're going to bring you. And all I really need to know to get that is your balance, your payment, your interest rate, and a couple other minor details that are on those forms. So make sure you have those forms in front of you. So you have that in that initial conversation, you set that appointment in stone, and now you're ready for that appointment. Again, you want to make sure that that appointment is solidified, not just I'll call you in a couple days, but it's a solid appointment that you're going to follow up with them within that 24 to 48-hour time frame so that people have a deadline. And the second appointment in the sales process is, and of course, in that first appointment, you're going to run the analysis. You're going to gather the person's information. You're going to not show them the results right then and there. Now, everybody has a different approach on how they do this. I personally, when I am closing, and although I don't do it as often anymore because I do typically refer over to corporate, when I do close, I like the 2-appointment close. I think it gives you a better opportunity to build rapport, to ask a lot of questions, to really get to know them. So I do like the 2-appointment close. So that a first appointment for me is simply gathering the information, really building a lot of rapport. Because I most likely have only spoken with one person, and now I have other decision makers present. And I want to make sure I have good rapport with every decision maker. Also, as a side note, men are typically not the decision maker. Don't tell anybody. Make sure that you have really good connection with the female in the group. Make sure that you're keeping eye contact and that you're keeping her engaged in the conversation. She typically has more of a decision-making process or involvement than the male. No offense to you guys out there, but you probably know it's true. So at the end of that conversation of that first appointment, you need to set the second appointment. And that second appointment should be within a short period of time as well. You want to make sure that you do it within a couple days also. You want to strike while the iron's hot. You want to make sure that they're still excited, that they're happy about it, that they're really eager to move forward. So that appointment, you have that solid appointment. Now I'll follow up with you in a couple days. It's a solid appointment. I'll be back at your house. We'll be back in front of our computer at Friday at 5 o'clock. I will call you at said number, whatever the number may be, at that time. That's when you're going to deliver the results. That's when you're going to start going through, pardon me, I'm so sorry. That's when you're going to deliver the results and start really bringing everything back together. And most of what you're going to be bringing back together, oddly enough, is the conversation from step 1, from that sales track. Then you're going to have a lot more detail from your first appointment as well. You bring it all back together to start really the not firm, but the closing techniques as well.
Yep. Thank you, Joan. That was excellent. And I imagine I'm still coming in because my bars aren't floating around like they were, so you can still hear me pretty good, correct?
Oh, yeah, you sound great.
All right, awesome. And you did an excellent job there. And see, people, I want you to know that, when you can take somebody impromptu and throw them on this and they just follow the path with the same information, you know that this is what we're doing across the board. Joan, excellent job of the review there. A couple of things I want to tell you, and then we're going to move through this with some basics in closing. Next week, we're going to look at actual techniques like the Ben Franklin doorknob close. If I could, would you? The take it away. Joan, you've been mentioning a little bit about the take it away. In closing basics, I just want to make sure that we really have a firm understanding that some of the things that are really important is taking a pause when you're talking your information with an individual, not just going over an analysis, but any piece of information that you're doing. Take time to pause for effect. Take time to pause at each section that you're discussing with that client. Allow your prospect that time they need to process the information. I think many times we tend to just bowl people over. We run over top of them. I've heard a lot of salesmen. There's an old saying that says, talking yourself right out of the sale. I love the old analysis of Samson in the Bible and him slewing the Philistine army, slaying the Philistine army with a certain weapon, and that weapon was the jawbone of an ass. And it's one of the best things I ever heard in any sales training, and that was that more sales are destroyed by the same weapon every single day. Don't allow yourself to get in front of yourself and get engaged in these long, deep, lengthy conversations. Sales is not about you rattling off your knowledge and your information. Sales is much more about you listening and positioning yourself and the information that you're receiving from the client in a way that is beneficial to you and the client. The more that the client is speaking, the more that you're gathering information from them, the more that you're directing them with short, even statements, allowing them to move, the better it's going to be for you. Ask open-ended questions that forces them to respond, like what does this information impact you? How will you knowing this information reality now impact your financial future? How does this look to you? How does this feel to you? Do you feel confident with the information, but you want to keep it open-ended? How does the information impact you? And then pause for that effect. I've just told you that you're going to save $169,000. You're going to knock, 21 years or, 18 years or 17 years or 14 years off of your mortgage. You're going to save anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000. How does that information impact you? How will knowing this is a reality now impact your financial future? I mean, there's a couple ways to ask the same question. The other thing you want to go into is I was extremely happy when I first saw these results for you and your family. What are you thinking right now? You have to get them really open and dreaming to the possibilities. This is truly amazing for you and your family. How do you think this will affect your financial future? Keep them in these very open-ended questions. Joan asked a question that I love, and what is it that you like the best about the information that you just saw? I love that question. What is it that you like best about the information that I've just reviewed with you? What is it that was the most attractive? It is very important to find out what it is that is the most important, the most effective, and most alluring to the individual that you're speaking to, not just about your program, but about the process. Make sure you pause for impact on your projected payoffs, your years saved, your projected savings, comparative interest rates. Comparative interest rates, do understand, and we're in a review here, when you're going through that analysis, that comparative interest rate is hard to beat, telling them, look, in order to save this kind of money and pay this debt off this fast, you would have had to have an interest rate of 1.8% in order to do what we are accomplishing here today. Make sure you're taking your time with this information. Open them up. Get them to really open up on themselves, okay? And so everything we've just talked about has been a review. And so what we are going to talk about now is the actual closing basics. We've given you a little bit of that information already. What did you like best about what you saw? How does it feel knowing that you have X amount of dollars in savings in the same amount of time it would have taken you without this program just to pay off your current mortgage and other debts? Bring up the wealth builder. Bring up different pieces of this, but get them talking about it. Get them talking in a positive manner about the analysis, about the results. What does this mean to you? Can you see where your future can go with this? What would you do with 21 months of mortgage payments? I mean, can you? So you want them to get excited on their own. Be observant. This step is a great place to take notice of the prospect's reactions, your body language, your facial expressions. This is something you should have been watching through the client throughout the whole thing, so you kind of have a good idea of how your client at this point, if you're in the closing, you've already done the analysis, especially if you're the one that did the analysis and you're the one doing the closing, you did the introductions. If you've been very observant, you kind of know your client by now. You've built a rapport. You know what it means when they cross their arms. Does that mean they're being turned off or pushed back, or does that just mean they're getting comfortable with you? Start to really know your prospect and really key in on these different aspects of this individual. Start the closing right at this point. Your first close should always be an assumptive close. If your prospect is responding openly, it feels comfortable throughout the section, it's perfect time, for your original things. But I want to make sure I'm clear on this. Your very first close, your first attempt should always be a very assumptive close. It's, man, this information is phenomenal. You talk to them about how it's going to impact their family. They came back and said, yeah, I can see that we can get this debt paid off. We can get you go on a vacation. We can have that second home, or start looking at that investment property, or start looking at flipping properties. I mean, people are more and more now looking towards multiple properties and flipping properties in the context that it really does afford and provide a very stable income, and we do know that the market is always increasing to some degree. We have our ebbs and flows, but having multiple doors to rent and having that passive income coming in, or having that money and that availability to be able to buy homes and flip homes, we're finding a lot of people are making a lot of money doing that and preparing for their retirement, relying more on that than relying on maybe investment and things of that nature. So this is also something that a lot of people are more savvy on nowadays with all the shows about it, the information on the net. You find more and more people that are getting involved into this area. This is where your soft close and your tie downs come back. However, they're fidgeting or looking uncomfortable. Be tactful by asking them, how is all this making you feel? People can just be real excited and don't want to make a decision because they think it's too good to be true. You have to vet out unless they're just ready to go. But that first close should always be that assumptive close, which is, hey, these are great results. You can see it. I can see it. Would you like to get started today? Can I get things going for you today? Can you and I, let's come together. Let's go ahead and let's buy this today and get your family on it. Let's get you working towards freeing up your financial future. Read their barometer. You have to keep a barometer on their actions and responses to maintain control of the process. You'll have to reassure them if they're shutting down or not understanding the information. If you see your client starting to gloss over or starting to fog, this is one of these areas where you have to kind of slow your roll down. You have to maybe go backwards. You have to start being concerned about how the client is perceiving the information and are they really grasping the information. If your client's beginning to gloss over, they're not engaged in this process, you're losing your client. Do be aware of that. If they're starting to look at their phone, if they're looking down, if they're not riveted to your attention, to your analysis, to the information that you're giving them, you're losing that client. It's a good time to stop and say, hey, we've been real tight through this whole process. We've, walked hand in hand through this. I noticed that, is there something you're not, thoroughly understanding? Am I going a little bit too fast? Call your client on how they are responding. A good way of doing this is to reiterate your personal borrowed story or sharing something from your own experiences that are relatable. Just say, that's the whole feel, felt, found idea, which we'll get into a couple examples of that in the next couple of weeks. But share something, hey, I've been in a similar position. I know this is a lot of information coming at you. Is that where we are? Do we need to slow this down? Do we need to take a little bit more time? Be forward and empathetic enough to ask them if they are uncomfortable, if there is something they do not understand about the information being presented. Is this not going in the direction that we need it to go? If your client is real receptive, you don't have to worry about any of this. It's just a matter of just moving them forward, just saying, okay, so the next step is now we're just going to pull it up. We're going to go ahead and get you activated on the program, and through activation, you're going to get an email. You're going to have clients like that you're going to take through the beginning part of this process. And I find a lot of my best clients were the ones that were a little bit harder to sell in the very beginning. I had to explain a little bit more. I did have to do demonstrations. I did have to go through a little bit more information for them so they thoroughly lock their mind around it. Don't be afraid. This program will stand up to scrutiny and will stand up to balancing. The money is not magic. There is no trickery here. This is all mathematics. So it's something that you can balance out for the client and prove out to them that it will truly work. Darlene, Joan, myself, anybody that's ever been in sales will tell you and will continue to tell you more listening and less talk. This is the area in this closing where you have to be a real active listener and really picking up on their cues and where they're moving and directing. And how do you put fingers in the dike? How do you plug the holes? How do you bring this full circle that it all makes sense to this client to a place where they're like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and this is how I want to do it. Every client will tell you exactly how to close them if you listen and you ask the right questions and you get them moving. Whatever they say here is usually a smoke screen, and that what I'm saying is if they come back and say, I need to think about it, I need to consult someone, I wasn't expecting to actually buy tonight, Believe me, there is something deeper going on here. If you've given a good presentation, given all the information, and they're backing up on you, if you followed your sales track, if you've used qualifiers and tie downs, if you've litmus tested them, if you've had your first appointment, your second appointment, your first appointment, you got a good analysis, second appointment, you're having great results for them. People typically tend to respond with the first thing that comes to mind out of nervous habit. It may not even be a true objection. They may just want to have time to think about it, but I have to tell you, as Joan said a little bit earlier, strike while the iron is hot. The counter move, to combat this initial response, you'll need to affirm, not contradict, their initial response. This technique is called agree and move on. So this is the first technique that we're really going to discuss, and that I want you to have, and that's use a statement like, I understand you feel uncomfortable. What exactly is making you feel that way? Please be honest with me. I'm really trying to help you here. I do understand that. Is there a way we can get over that? This is where feel felt found. I have been in a similar position where I've had a lot of information coming at me. I've had to make a decision. I just wanted time to think about it, or somebody to help me work this out. It could be you. I want you to be aware of this. But typically at this stage, you should have already vetted that out if there's a problem with you and the client. But your demeanor, your approach, your appearance, your smell, the way you dress. I know that sounds really harsh, but this is a fact of sales. Many times you can do everything absolutely right, and the client just doesn't like something about you, or the client just changed their mind, or the client saw something on YouTube and got some information that they weren't anticipating that they would get. It just kind of flipped their approach. People buy from people they like. People buy from people they like. People can be turned off by the strangest things. People buy on emotion and back it up with logic. You must get at the core of what is bothering them if you're going to overcome an objection with a client. In your sales process, one of the most important things that you have to do is to be building a portfolio of this client in your mind and on book and notes of what makes them tick. Who is this person? So when you come down and they have objections, or they have, they're trying to wiggle out, or they're trying to say, I don't really know if this is for me, you can bring them back and hold them accountable with the questions that you've asked them previously. Whatever you do, don't get ruffled with your client, because this is where this kind of stuff will happen. They'll be all happy in that first appointment, the first conversation, when they're watching videos, everything is cool. When they're doing the analysis, it's all cool. You got to remember, you're down to crunch time now. And as we said, people buy on emotion and back it up with logic. So while your numbers may be really good, while you may have a really good performance review for them as far as the analysis report, people aren't always just sold on the numbers. They want to be sold on the emotion, the dream, and the reality. Use it as a learning opportunity in this scenario. You could have done everything right, and you could still have them backing up against you and may not make the sale. If it's something that, like that, collect yourself, try to adjust, move on. It could be something altogether different. You need to find out what it is. They may have questions. You're going to have to answer their questions right here if they push. I would suggest, however, making a statement like, we're almost finished reviewing your report. Do you mind if we complete the review, and I will answer any questions you have at that time? Because the clients are going to try to interrupt. What is the bottom line? Where are we at? This can happen anywhere in this process, but this second appointment is where a lot of this is going to happen. In the first appointment, what we talked about is they're going to have questions. Well, how exactly does it work? Well, that's why we're running the analysis. When I come back for the second appointment, we'll be able to review that information. I will know what your situation looks like and how the program will benefit you, or, that type of scenario. So I'm just trying to give you an idea that throughout this entire process, you're going to have to maintain the control. You're going to have to understand the process, and you're going to have to lead them to it. Sales is a business that requires a tough skin, as many of you are finding out. If it was so easy to be successful as a salesperson, everyone would do it because the rewards are so great. Sales takes trial and error. It takes patience and tact. It takes classroom and field work. But above all, it takes time, it takes experience, and it takes grit. Sales is not the easiest track to follow. Sales will wear your patience. But if you do it as an educator, if you do it as just getting the information out there, you'll find that it removes a lot of that. Your attitude does determine your altitude. I will master this. I will do whatever it takes. I will not let this beat me. I am undefeatable. Be a wolf, not a fox terrier. Grab a hold. Don't let go. And hang on for the ride. The one thing that I do know about sales is that sales is ever evolving. Your process with an individual, the better notes you take, the better listener you are, the more engaging you are, the better you're going to do in this. But above all, always be honest with your client. If you don't know the answer, don't wing it. Tell them, you know what, that's a great question. I'm going to get an answer for you. I don't have the answer to that. Always advocate your client to keep the process moving forward. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. If you wish to get in touch with myself or Worth Support, you can feel free to reach out to us at either of these areas. I want to thank Dr. Joan for jumping in there in the very beginning. I am very hopeful that the rest of this presentation, that everything with the audio got better, and that we did much better with the audio there at the very end. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank everybody for being on the phone. Joan, you got a lot of good job, Joan. Darlene, thank you, and Harry for getting out there and doing the live meetings for us. And just everyone, we want to thank you so much for being a part of the family and being a part of the team. And this has been the Worth Unlimited Sales Track Training and Update. Tonight's subject for December 17, 2018 was Closing Basics. I have been your host for this evening, Max Saunders, your National Sales and Training Director. Pam Reed, Virginia, thank you so much. Joan, everyone that was on the call, I wish all of you a very, very Merry Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, I wish you a very Merry whatever it is that you celebrate. Me personally, I do celebrate Christmas, so I'm really looking forward to this. I know we will not have a call before that. I want everyone to make a note. There will be an email going out. Since Christmas Eve is a Monday and Christmas is a Tuesday this week, we will be having the call on Wednesday evening. I know that's not convenient for a lot of people, but so Wednesday the 26th, I believe that will be the date. We will be having same time. We'll be having the Worth Update training call. And then for New Year's, we're in the same position that Monday is New Year's Eve and Tuesday is New Year's. Tuesday will be New Year's Day. So for the New Year's schedule, we will actually be doing the call on Tuesday evening, because I don't see as much of a difficulty with doing the call on New Year's Day as I do with doing the call Christmas Day in the evening. So just make a note of that Christmas's call, the call after Christmas will be held on Wednesday the 26th. And for New Year's, the presentation will be on Tuesday, which will be New Year's Day. Presenters will not be available, some of them. I know a lot of people do Bible study on Wednesday evenings. That's a big deal on Wednesday nights. So I just want to thank everybody for being on, and I just want to thank everybody for that information. So let's get out there and do it big. Let's get out there and do it right. But at the very least, let's get out there and do something right now. This is Max Saunders saying, oh, let me give you one last thing. I did already bring up Darlene having her live meeting on January 29th. I just want to mention that again, that will be January 29th at 6:45 p.m. South Carolina. There will be some more emails going out about that, notifying the field as an update. But once again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Darlene and Harry, for doing the live meetings. And there will be emails going out on that, and I will be bringing that up on the next call right after Christmas. To everyone, a very Merry Christmas, very happy holiday. This is Max Saunders saying, let's get out there and do it big. Let's get out there and do it right. But at the very least, let's get out there and do something right now. This is Max Saunders saying bye-bye for now.